Okay, so today I'm going to talk about frequency distribution. Frequency distribution is one way in statistics that we can evaluate the how frequently data occurs, as well as the most commonly the center of our data and things like that. So we're going to discuss that. There are characteristics of frequency distribution. What we're going to talk about today is measures of central tendency, skewness, and kurtosis. There's also measures of dispersion, but I'm not going to talk about that at this time because it's more complicated and has a lot of formulas and things to use. And for time's sake, I'm just going to go over these three characteristics at this time. So let's go ahead and start with measures of central tendency. So measures of central tendency, there's mean, median, mode, and range. And for the mean, we're looking at the average of the data values. So all of our data in our data set, we're going to calculate the mean by averaging those values together and then dividing by the number of values in our data set. So when you have a small data set, you can do this easily by hand just by adding up all of your values and then dividing by the number of values that you added up. If you have a large data set, there is a formula that can be used as well, and programs that will allow you to find the mean of large data sets, such as the SPSS program that we've used throughout class. Mode is in a data set, the mode is the number that occurs most frequently. So you look at your data and you determine which value occurs the most often. Sometimes nothing repeats, so that would be something that is we would say there's no mode. Sometimes you have multiple values that repeat, so it would be considered multimodal. Next, we'll talk about median. There are some value or some formulas you can use here that show you how to calculate the median. But median is just the value that is found directly in the middle of the data set when you put those values in order from least to greatest. So it's exactly what it sounds like. It's the middle of the data. The median separates the higher values from the lower values. So it kind of draws a line down the middle. You have your low values to one side and your high values to the other side. It is more representative of the center of the data because it's not skewed by outliers. And I didn't really talk about that, but the mean can be skewed by outliers because you're adding all of those numbers together. So if you have a lot of data that's within the same area, but then you have a number that's really high or really low, it can result in a skewed mean because of the outliers. So median is a little more representative of the center because it isn't dependent on those outliers. And then to find the median, you just put the values in order from least to greatest and then find that middle value. If there are two numbers within the middle, then you can add those two and divide by 2 to find the average of the two numbers in the center. So basically when you look at your data, if you have an odd number of values, you know that you're going to have just find the middle term, and you can use this formula here, n plus 1, and then divide by 2, and that will give you the median of your data. And if you have a even number of values, you could use this formula as well. And then for large data sets, there's always functionality in the SPSS program to be able to evaluate those large data sets without having to calculate or list out long list of values and risk making a mistake. So normal distribution can be represented by the bell curve, and for normal distribution, everything's directly in the middle. The mean, median, mode all fall within that middle of the bell curve, and it's symmetrical on both sides. However, when we have values that are skewed because of outliers, our normal bell curve can become skewed. So skewness refers to the asymmetry of the data. It either skews to the right or to the left. So when you look at it, if it's going to the, when it's skewed more towards the left, it's positively skewed, and then when it's more to the right, it's negatively skewed. And we have a longer tail here, so there are more outliers in this data area that are pushing the mean, median, mode to the left or to the right. And then kurtosis is talks about the steepness of the curve. So the normal curve is equal on both sides. It's symmetrical, but negative kurtosis results in a flatter curve because there are more outliers that have to be included in the data, so it flattens the curve out. And then positive kurtosis results in a taller curve with shorter tails on the ends because there are fewer outliers. So that is everything that I wanted to talk about with frequency distribution, and thank you.